Today, I'd like to pay tribute to one of the greatest chess teachers of all time, Grandmaster Daniel Naroditsky, or Danya, as his friends called him. He was equally at home teaching the CEOs of companies, famous celebrities, athletes, content creators, and oh yes, kids. From beginner all the way up to master, he was responsible for teaching thousands of kids during his Grandmaster in residency at the Charlotte Chess Center. And oh, by the way, while teaching, he could give callbacks to famous historical figures and even teach you in Russian, Armenian, English, French, Spanish. I literally forgot how many languages he was able to teach in. And you know what? He even wrote a book when he was 14 years old, one of the smartest, funniest, and most giving grandmasters out there. And he played a Kids versus Stars event earlier on ChessKid, and we're going to revisit those games today. Now, in this position, he was playing against Tani Adawume, who went on to become an international master. But before that could happen, Daniel had to play this move, Rook to B1. And this poor queen, she's got to capture one of these two pawns. So Tani decided to capture the pawn on A2. Now, you might think that Danya's knight is pinned to the queen, and that's true, but remember, it is not an absolute pin. This is one of those rare times the knight can and should move, because when the knight moves, although you're opening up your queen to attack, you're also discover attacking this rook way up here. And even though it was a simul where he was playing 4 boards, Danya is not going to miss a tactic like this. He played knight captures knight, and now, in addition to being ahead of knight, the bishop is hanging and the rook is hanging, and if he captures that rook, he's going to skewer the king and the other rook. In all variations, he's going to end up ahead on material. Now, Tani decided to castle, which still attacks the queen, but now at least the rooks are defended. But after this very cool move, rook to A1, both queens are hanging, but since Danya was up a piece, he actually went on to win. Black resigned in this position. His queen is actually still running out of squares. Okay, so he was up 1-0. Now, in this next game against Aaron Mendes, who, by the way, would also go on to become an international master if he wasn't already at the time, the position is roughly equal. But you know what? He tried to trick the kids. He played this pawn sacrifice, bishop to E7, and oh yes, that is another rook discovered attack. Now, why is it sacrifice the pawn? Well, that's because Aaron played rook takes rook, and when the queen takes, now nothing is guarding this pawn, and the queen takes on B2. But Danya remembers that when there's opposite colored bishops, the attacker has the advantage. So what he decided to do was get rid of this knight before it could move to E6 and block the light square bishop. So he captures the knight, Aaron captures back, but now we have opposite colored bishops, and after queen to F3, it's looking really bad for black. Queen takes pawn, the bishop and the queen are lined up, and if your king moves, I can actually checkmate you on G8. However, we need to give some credit to Aaron here, because Aaron found the only defense on the board, and you guys might want to try to find it. If you're black here, how do you possibly defend this pawn? Well, there's no normal way, but what you do have is a check. And by playing queen to B1, now the queen actually has a way back to F5 to get back in the defense. Now, Danya went ahead and captured this pawn, and the game ended up equaling a draw, but I do like the trick that he placed before his young friend in this game. Okay, so he was up 1.5 to 1/2, but then he ran into Alice Lee. Now, Alice is also an international master, and I do want to say, he told me behind the scenes he was rooting for all of these kids to become a grandmaster, but only after this event was over. So he was still definitely a competitor at heart. Now, Alice actually got the best of him in this game, but what I really want to show you is this unbelievable tactic that somehow Danya found. Maybe only Danya could find a tactic like this while playing 3 other boards. So, in this position, he plays queen to F5, which is probably a mistake, but here was his original thinking. He was trying to get black to play pawn to G6 because that would weaken black's king side. Black doesn't want the queen to hang out here, so he's kind of like wanting this pawn to come forward. He wants to give black a free move. And after pawn to G6, his original idea was to play queen F4, allow the knight to come to D3, which would be a fork because the queen would be sitting here, the rook would be sitting here. But he's going to give away a little bit of material. He's going to give away the rook for the knight. He's going to capture this pawn in the process. And with the bishop and this knight able to jump into the position and another rook, which would take place of the first rook, pretty much every one of white's forces would be involved in the attack. But watch what he spotted at the last minute. If his queen goes to F4 and the knight goes to D3, and the queen takes, remember, this was all his original analysis, he spotted knight to G4, and amazingly, this queen is trapped. How on earth did he see that 3 or 4 moves ahead while playing 3 other games? Well, I'll never know. And now he went on to lose the game anyway, but of course Alice was beating everybody this year. So now the score was 1.5 to 1.5. It all came down to the last game. And here we go. He's playing what I know will be a future international master, Bodhana Sivanandan of England. And in this position, white is already a little bit better, but Danya had the choice. He could play the move e6 right away or play some sort of preparation move. And you know what? It was actually better to not play e6 right away. He played the strongest move on the board, the only one that for sure gives white a winning advantage, which is queen to g3.
Hello.
This clever little move does a couple of things. Of course, it attacks the pawn on g7, but also it opens up the rook to support the pawn. And a lot of times, if you play e6 here, you're going to free your rook, you're going to free your bishop, you're going to free your queen, and you may even sacrifice with whatever black takes back with on e6. In fact, black doesn't really have a good move in this position, because if black castles to get the king off of that dangerous e-file and to defend the pawn, well, that pawn's pinned. Bishop takes h6 would have been found by Danya in 0.0001 seconds, and good luck trying to stop checkmate in the long run. Queen takes is going to be the queen and helper mate. And of course, if your pawn pushes, I'll just take, and there's really no defense to the king's side. Let's back up. What else could black do? Well, black could play rook to g8, but again, bishop takes h6 still happens, because if the pawn takes, then the queen will of course take the rook, and white is up a lot of material. Now, what if you try a move like rook to h7? Well, now we go back to the other plan, which is to blast through with this move e6. And if you take with the pawn, you no longer guard this square. So queen to g6 would fork the king and the rook. And if you take with the bishop, well, here comes that sacrifice. Danya would take another 0.0001 seconds to find this tactic. Rook takes, pawn takes, queen check, and no matter where the king moves, takes the rook, and Danya, with an extra piece, with those really weak dark squares, would surely win this game. Now, Danya played almost 150,000 online chess games, an unbelievable number. This is a man who loved chess more than anything. He loved giving back to kids. He loved being in the arena, and I think he's still going to be remembered for a long time as one of the best chess teachers out there. And oh, by the way, he's influenced yours truly. The way he does commentary, his excitement in the game, the way he calls out moves as the clock is ticking down, I have tried my best to emulate him, and I'll be trying for a long time. Nobody was as good as Danya Naroditsky. That's a name that we're going to remember on ChessKid. Thank you, Danya, for everything you did for the kids.